So finally, I'm going to turn this over to Professor and poet Gail Ronsky, who's from the English department, and she's going to introduce Evelyn and get this show on the road.
Well, when I first heard about this whole faculty pub night thing, I got really excited, and then I realized that it wasn't just about drinking. It was also about faculty publications. But anyway, it's been a wonderful series, and I was really happy to be part of it. And tonight's event, I think, today's event is really very special. When Evelyn McDonnell joined the English department about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, the cool factor in the English department went up like 1,000,000 times, and I still love her. And I felt like I was replaced as the fashion icon of the department, but I still love her. Anyway, she's one of the most accomplished people who has ever come at the entry-level position to LMU. Her credentials are so impressive that I'm going to read you her biography because there's no way that I could have memorized all of this stuff. And I think it's really important to hear all of the things that she has done. Because it sounds like, and then either she's had a lot of plastic surgery and she's really 80 years old, or, this is the resume of a much older person. Anyway, Evelyn McDonnell has been writing about popular culture and society for more than 25 years. She's the author of 4 books, Queens of Noise, The Real Story of the Runaways, which she's going to read from today, Mama Rama, a memoir of sex, kids, and rock and roll, Army of She, Icelandic, iconoclastic, irrepressible Björk, who is fabulous, and Rent by Jonathan Larson. She co-edited the anthologies Rock, She Wrote, Women Write About Rock, Pop, and Rap, and Stars Don't Stand Still in the Sky, Music and Myth. She has been the editorial director of www.molly.com, pop culture writer at the Miami Herald, senior editor at the Village Voice, associate editor at SF Weekly. Her writing on music, poetry, theater, and culture has appeared in numerous publications and anthologies, including the LA Times, Ms., Rolling Stone, the New York Times, Spin, Travel and Leisure, Us, Billboard, Vibe, Interview, Black Book, and Option. Pretty much you name it, she's been in there. She co-directed the conference Stars Don't Stand Still in the Sky, Music and Myth at the Dia Center for the Arts in New York. She has won several fellowships and awards, including an Annenberg Fellowship at USC and a fellowship to the NEA Arts Journalism Institute in Theater and Musical Theater. Her 2004 Herald Expose of Hip Hop Cops was awarded first place for enterprise reporting by the South Florida Black Journalists Association and second place in the Society of Professional Journalists Sunshine State Awards. She earned her master's in specialized journalism, the arts, from USC, where she received an Annenberg Fellowship and was chosen for the Phi Kappa Phi Honor Society. She currently teaches journalism here and lives in San Pedro with her husband, son, lots of animals, and, believe me, a truly fantastic view of the ocean. Please welcome Evelyn McDonnell.
I could never replace Gail as a passionate icon. Couldn't happen, but thank you. That made me blush. Thanks to everyone, to the library staff for coming up with this incredible collaboration with KXLU, to Jamie and Carol and Ray and Christina, and to KXLU for broadcasting this and bringing this incredible band, excuse me, that we're going to see shortly, Mukta. So great. My former student Harmony is going to be playing some music lately, and you should definitely check out her band, Girl Pool, when you get a chance. They're Amazing, amazing all-girl band. Thanks to my students that are here. Make sure you sign up so you get credit. All right. Gotta bring in a crowd somehow. And I don't know, did I forget anybody else? Thanks, to my colleagues in the English department who supported me on this journey of writing this book at the same time as I was figuring out how to be a teacher, and also to the staff of the dean's office at UCLA who supported me as well. I had some students who helped me along the way as research assistants. I don't know if any of them are here. Most of them have graduated, but Hayla Murphy and Mo Haley and Jenna Abdu also made this book possible. So if your friends are theirs, say hey for me. And I don't know if there's also a research librarian here, Alex Justice, who helped me find a lot of the articles that really made this book what it is. So shout out to him. This library was really indispensable in doing the preliminary finding all these old articles about the Runaways, because I really wanted to document this band and take it beyond the kind of mythology of movies and other stories that had come out about them, and really anchor them in history. So I needed the facts for that. So I will be signing the book afterwards outside. We're all going to reconvene downstairs and hear the fantastic band Upset. I'm going to be talking about an all-girl band of the 70s. This is an all-girl band of now with members of Hole and Vivian Girls. So I'm really excited about that. So make sure to stick around. And also Melissa McAllister from the amazing KXLU show She Rocks will be interviewing me, asking me some questions, and you guys can ask me some questions shortly. But I just want to kind of make some opening remarks and read a little bit of the book to you so you can decide if you want to spend your money on it. A little sneak preview. So I'm going to start with that. And hopefully you can hear me. Okay, how's that? Can you hear me? Okay, because they're broadcasting this too, so we have to make sure all the sound gets carried. All right, this is from Chapter 2, California Girls. Sort of the origin myth of the Runaways, but not a myth, origin story. On a summer day in 1975, Joan Larkin picked up her Sears Silvertone guitar and boarded a bus in Canoga Park, a Los Angeles suburb in the northern part of the San Fernando Valley. The girl with the Susie Quattro haircut was 16 but didn't have a driver's license. Her destination? Huntington Beach, in the heart of what architecture critic Rainer Bonham once dubbed Surfurbia, on the opposite end of the Southland sprawl. In mass transit-challenged LA, there were no trains to help Larkin reach her destination, so it took 4 buses and a few hours to voyage the more than 60 miles. Through the windows, Larkin could watch the various terrains of the city that was her relatively new home, the famous Hollywood Hills, downtown skyscrapers, the concrete grid valley that Bonham called the Plains of Id, the Golden Coast of Orange County. Joan didn't mind the time and hassle. She was on a mission to make musical history. The troubadour finally arrived at the town known by some as Surf City, USA. A teenager with a golden mane, piercing blue eyes, and impressive biceps greeted her. In notes she wrote before her death, Sandy Pesavento remembered the first time she met Joan Larkin. There was this girl standing there with a dirty blonde shag haircut and big mirrored sunglasses, holding a guitar case. Sandy and Joan had never met before, only talked on the phone after Hollywood hustler Kim Fowley connected them. Joan was, 10 months older than Sandy, but shy and inexperienced. Sandy talked boisterously like a true Italian with her hands. She already had a band. They both loved sports and rock and roll. They clicked. When we met, I don't know, I can't explain it. When you meet somebody that you connect with on such a level, Joan says, she was so friendly and outgoing. She was like me. She was a tomboy. She loved sports. She was a roughhouser. We hit it off right away. Sandy also immediately sensed a kindred spirit. In some ways, personality-wise it is, talking with her hands, Joan and I were like night and day. She wouldn't say something in 20 words if she could say it in 10. I think I was different for Joan, with me being so West Coast, surfs up, and she being so East Coast with her tough accent and leather jacket. Then in other ways, she and I were on the same page. She loved playing sports and having fun, and we both had a healthy sense of competition. We were also both really serious about playing music and played our instruments with total commitment. Most importantly, we shared a lot of the same ideals about being in a rock band. When it was time to play, we wanted to go out there and kick everyone's butt, but she doesn't say butt. Radio. Like a rock and roll football team. Joan and Sandy went straight to business. The two strangers ascended to the above-garage rec room in the two-story home where the seven-sistered Pesavento Williams family lived. Sandy had 6 sisters, 2 blood and 3 stepsisters. Can you imagine that household? Talk about girl power. Sandy's red pearl drum set held court. Like Joan's silver-flecked Silvertone, the kit sparkled. The girls were literally glitter rockers. Larkin plugged her guitar into a Marshall amp that Pesavento had borrowed from the band she played in, Witchcraft. Sandy was used to playing with others. Joan had only ever played at home, alone. They liked a lot of the same music, but they didn't know how to play many of the same songs. They jammed on simple chord progressions, classic rock and roll stuff, Chuck Berry and the Rolling Stone riffs. They settled into All Shook Up, the Elvis Presley tune, but they played Susie Quattro's version. This isn't All Shook Up, but this is the first song that Joan ever wrote. And this is from one of the first Runaways demos made within just a few weeks of this jam session. That's why I want you so bad when you're gone. A little more. I couldn't believe how she played, Joan says. She was such a solid, strong, powerful, really good drummer. I don't even want to say for being 16, for being anything. She would sit there and play Zeppelin stuff, John Bonham stuff, note for note. Some of those songs are really intense, the double kick drums, the toms. She had this down, and it was powerful. We locked in right away. So lock in is like musicians' lingo, meaning to find a shared groove, to play in time, in sync. Sandy used the exact same phrase to describe that first rehearsal with Joan. Quote, "From the very beginning, she had perfect rhythm. We both looked over at each other. We just locked in." Here they were, 2 teenaged tomboys from opposite ends of Los Angeles, jamming. It must have been an incredible feeling, a moment of enlightenment. Quote, "We had the hugest smiles on our faces, and I think it dawned on us how awesome this was. 2 chicks just rocking out together." So it's You Turn Me On. It's, like I say, it's one of the first songs she wrote. So 2 chicks just rocking out together, like a rock and roll football team. What do those words mean? Why does that feel so radical, this notion of women connecting through music, of playing together, of playing together as a team, of trying to be a team, of trying to score, right? This is the thing that's so powerful about the Runaways, almost 40 years later. Her words capture the sense of possibility, of young, creative female energy twined together, that one still gets when listening to the Runaways music, play it a little bit more, or watching video footage of the band in Japan, or even just looking at pictures of the all-girl group. And, there's a picture of the Fabulous Five, the lineup with Cherie Currie, the singer, and bassist Jackie Fox and drummer Lita Ford. This is sort of the most famous version of the band that went through a few different versions. So. Before the Runaways came along in 1975, there were pitifully few bands with any female instrumentalists, let alone 5 of them, right? And the Runaways didn't try to sing pretty together. They they had these heavy Les Paul electric guitars and Thunderbird basses, and they pounded their sticks. They shredded and wailed. They played like the boys played, without once denying that they were girls. So Queens of Noise is a specific history of a short-lived, underrated band in a very notorious time and place, 1970s Sunset Strip, right? But I also see it as a bigger story, bigger than just one band. It's this coming-of-age story about what can happen to girls as they try to become women in a world of expanding promise but still limited options and opportunities. The Runaways honed and owned their role as girls born to be bad, queens of noise. These are their words, their own phrases, or words that people wrote about them, actually. They were completely aware that they were kicking down walls with their axes and sticks. They were apparently not ready for the venom and vitriol of the counterattack against their insurgency, which would eventually thwart them. They fell apart in an unseemly mass of intrigue, incriminations, drugs, and just plain failure. It would take years before Jones, Andy, Lita, Cherie, Jackie would begin to get credit for the ground they had broken when, in the 1990s, the Riot Girls, expressly carrying on the legacy of the Runaways, dubbed this estrogen energy, this cherry bomb, girl power. Flash forward another 2 decades later, and a collective of artists took up the girls' call to riot. If you need proof of just how revolutionary the power of girls jamming together can be, consider that the world may be stepping into the maw of a major geopolitical upheaval whose notes were first sounded by those incredibly brave women in Pussy Riot, right? And this is a painting of Pussy Riot by the singer Gene Smith, who was also one of the seminal Riot Girl figures of the band McDonnell. So I'm not saying the Runaways wanted to overthrow the government. Pussy Riot probably do. But I do believe they were trying to change the world. They wanted to be in a rock and roll band because they grew up in the wake of second wave feminism. And they had different backgrounds and tastes, but the one thing they agreed on was that girls could do whatever boys did. And they wanted to be sure that girls were allowed to be loud. I love that picture. We actually did a photo shoot for my author photo at the beach by my house, and we did a picture of me replicating that historic pose. But unfortunately, my publicist would not allow me to send it out as my author photo. But I'd be happy to. It has been on my Facebook page occasionally. So within a month of first rocking out in Sandy West's Rec Room, the Runaways were playing LA's famed Whiskey A Go-Go. In 4 months, they had a major label record deal. In 1 year, they had not only crossed the continent touring, but they had gone all the way to England, spreading anarchy in the UK. By 1977, they were #1 artists in Japan, where they created a kind of Beatlemania-style hysteria when they went on tour there. And in a 1978 tour, they co-headlined with the Ramones, spreading the new sound of punk rock to the American heartland. And one of my goals with Queens of Noise was to show the pivotal role that I think the Runaways played in musical history, okay, as models for the Germs and for Motley Crue. They simultaneously ushered in, at least in LA, the era of punk rock and of hair metal. There's Joan and Lita. From LA to New York to London to Japan, girls and boys who saw the Runaways live or watched Lita and Joan's guitar face off on the British TV show The Old Grey Whistle Test were inspired to form their own bands. Or maybe 15 years later, someone passed you a cassette tape with Cherry Bomb on it and your band Bratmobile decided to play it. Or maybe you're one of the recipients of the Sandy West Scholarship at the Girls Rock Camp in Portland, Oregon, and you learn to play drums and sing Wild Thing just like Sandy West used to play it. The Go-Go's, the Bags, X, the Bangles, the Lunachicks, Hole, the Donnas, Girl in a Coma, Miley Cyrus, Cherry Bomb, there's a band called Cherry Bomb. The list of female musicians influenced by the Runaways goes on and on, as well as male musicians. The Runaways were among the first women to find in the raw power of punk music a way of being bold and unbowed in the world. Something incredible happens when girls get together and play music. I believe they create a revolutionary soul force, revolution girl style, as Bikini Kill exhorted. I believe there's a new wave, a permanent wave, as some are calling it, of empowered young female musicians, including LA's own Girlpool and Cherry Glazer and Upset, who we're about to hear. And they're carving out new ways for women to be in the world. So people ask me if Queens of Noise is this a cautionary tale or is it inspiring? And I definitely document a lot of the ghastly things that happened to the Runaways. Financial exploitation, gross sexual harassment, heavy drug use for teenage girls, or for anybody, but particularly for teenage girls. Some really horrible misogynistic criticism and stereotypes. But still, my number one motive in writing this book was to make young women listen to the Runaways and go out and form a band. So do it. Do it now. Song American Nights, which is off the very first Runaways album from 1976. And to me, just one of these classic songs. I mean, this song should be overplayed on classic rock, just like all those bright songs by male bands are. But this one, really deserves that kind of play. Mercury refused to release it as a single from Valley, bless his twisted little heart. Pushed for it, and Mercury said no. They only released Cherry Bomb as the single from that record. It's also a great song. But one of the things I wonder in this book is what would have happened if American Nights had been released. And the Runaways have been able to show that they could write songs not just about girls losing their virginity, but about like how great it is to be in a rock and roll band and be partying all night and all these things that Bruce Springsteen or the Hold Steady or Bill Clear. So hopefully you'll all go out and check out the rest of those records. So Melissa's going to come up and ask me some questions about the book, and then we'll take questions from you. So I'm going to move over to these chairs and hopefully take this side out. Okay. And this is Melissa McAllister from KXU's Fabulous She Rocks program. Wednesdays from 7 to 9?
7 to 8.
7 to 8. It should be 7 to 9.
I think so too. I'm a little nervous being here. Normally I do a radio show with no one watching me, and I kind of feel like the guy that does the behind the actor's studio right now. It's kind of creepy. But they provided beer, so I'm here. So I have a couple of questions, and a lot of you are students or professors, so you'll probably have better questions, so you'll have time to ask them too. My first question is, what was the biggest misconception you had about the band, The Runaways, before you started this project?
Well, there was just a lot of actual factual misunderstandings about the band that were even in their own representations of themselves in the movies that were out, so both in the documentary Edge Play, which was made by one of the bass players, Victory Tischler Blue, and in the Runaways movie by Floria Sigismondi, the feature film that starred someone named Kristen Stewart, Dakota Fanning. There were things that, and of course, the second movie wasn't a documentary, I understand, and I actually really enjoyed that movie. But both movies tended to overplay the role of certain members of the band, depending upon who was involved in the movie. So what I really wanted to do was to try to provide an objective third-person balanced account of just what happened in the overall history of the band, and that the band did not end when Cherie left, for instance, and that actually the band not even last as long as Lita Ford says they did in Edge Play. So also, I think just realizing, as that quote from Sandy says, that they were so serious about what they wanted to do. They weren't just a novelty act. A lot of people think they were like the Sex Pistols, who were, in a sense, a novelty act put together by a manager. The Runaways really wanted to be musicians and be taken seriously from the beginning. And I think really understanding that and understanding the way in which they were not and how hard that was for them. I think that was the biggest revelation.
As a fan of the band, there's a lot of disturbing things you read about the band that I didn't know about, and kind of make you feel weird about them. How do you stay objective when you're researching that as a fan? How do you stay positive about it?
It was actually really hard to stay positive about it. I actually just was thinking about this today, that basically I spent as long researching and writing this book as the band stayed together. It's almost an analogous period of time, and it was very tortured. They really did go through some painful things, and they were not always very nice to each other. And there's still a lot of acrimony between members of the band. And it was very difficult to navigate that and still respect them. I think the music kept me going through, and that I would get songs like American Nights stuck in my head was fun and a joy, and that kept my perspective. And also, I still do think of them as pioneers, and I think they were put in a very twisted situation of the Sunset Strip in the 1970s, which was in a sense liberating, but which is also a very exploitative sexual environment. And I think that they all came out of it a little damaged. So I don't really blame them for it. They were young.
Something that you just talked about, the Sunset Strip, something that I found really interesting about the book was how much you talk about Los Angeles and the social and political climate that was going on there, from the South Bay to the Sunset Strip. And now that you're a LA resident, was any of this surprising, what was going on? And how much research did you have to do to you found out so much.
Thank you. I tried. And my RAs helped. My research assistants helped. Well, I'm actually a native Angelino, so I think in a way, or Angelina, I think in a way I was attracted to the story. So I was actually I felt like it was a very LA story. I think that is one of the things I really wanted to convey, that in the sense that they represented the sprawl, that they, as that passage I read, they went from the North Valley all the way down to Orange County and spots in between. So that really captures what LA is, right? The suburban sprawl. And then they kind of converged in Hollywood on the Sunset Strip, and were really the queens of the Strip for a couple of years. Is also another very LA setting. So it's a great setting. And that's one of the things that Sigismundi's movie gets absolutely right, is the incredible glory and sleaze of the glam scene of LA in the mid-70s. I was definitely drawn to that, and Carrie Crome, who was the original lyricist for the Runaways, and it was partly her idea to have this all-girl band, that she wanted somebody to sing her songs. She was 14 years old. She actually took me on a tour of the Runaways LA one day. We spent an afternoon together in my car, driving around. She showed me, we went to where the Sugar Shack was. We went to where Joan's apartment was, which was across from the Whiskey A Go-Go. Went to their rehearsal spaces and stuff like that. And so that was really cool. So I got like a first-hand account of what all that was like. And then I looked at texts from the time, like that Rainer Bonham book is from the early 70s and really captures the ethos of LA. And then the counterpoint was this Peter Plagin's essay, The Ecology of Evil, which has a different point of view on LA than Bonham's sort of positive outlook.
When I think about the Runaways, I always equate them with feminism, but something that you brought up in your book a lot was how they almost seemed disinterested with it and didn't want to be associated with it.
Yeah, I would say they even hated it. I mean, they actually sent some very, anti-feminist things. I think because feminism had a stigma that they didn't want to be associated with. It was something associated with hippies. They were very anti-hippies. It's a great line from one of their songs. We're too late for the kids in love. We're the kids in hate. So they were really against that whole summer of love past, right? They wanted to set out this new generation. And also because I think Kim Fowley was no friend of feminism, and he was sort of providing them maybe some of their talking points. That probably didn't help, but I think they just did not identify as feminists. I think there was already a backlash against feminism at that time. And some of them still don't really identify as feminists, even though I think they're feminists, what they did. Joan is the most sort of outspoken about women's rights issues.
You mentioned Kim Fowley, and he's definitely a big part of the story. And some of the members hate him, and people that hung around with them have negative stories. Some people give him a lot of credit. Can you talk about your experiences interviewing him and what your final verdict on him is?
Wow. Kim was a huge part of the story, and as he made sure I realized. But, he really was. He deserves a lot of the credit, and he deserves a lot of the blame. But he was very helpful to me. I'm sure that was strategic. He's a very smart man and knew that the best way to get good coverage in the book was to participate. And participate he did. I mean, I spent hours and hours and hours on the phone with him, which if anybody here has ever talked to Kim Fowley is not a hard thing to do. He's very loquacious. And met him a couple times, talked to him a couple times in person. And it's always, it's a circus around Kim to this day. I mean, he's still absolutely who he is. I mean, he's the ultimate freak. And but he's completely comfortable in that. He still surrounds himself with beautiful younger women who still seem to really get something out of their relationships with him. So. They're rolling their eyes in the front of
When current bands or music critics talk about the Runaways now, it's always with reverence and how much they did. But something you mentioned in the book was how much a lot of the music critics, a lot of people in the East, and radio DJs, most of the male, trivialized what they did. Can you elaborate on what they were facing when they were releasing things and all these reviews horrible reviews that if anyone wrote it about me, I'd cry?
Yeah, there was some really... I mean, the initial press was actually fairly positive, and Kim was very good at getting them a lot of press, and he was very good at giving colorful quotes and helping them learn how to work with journalists. But there very quickly was a huge backlash. And it was really incredibly sexist, and they were called nymphettes all the time. That was like a favorite word, that they were nymphettes. And other words that I probably shouldn't say because we're being broadcast live. There's a very famous Cream review that was basically accused them of having filleted their way onto the record label. Yeah, it was pretty nasty stuff. It was very interesting for me because my first book was actually called Rock, She Wrote. It was a collection of women writing about music that was founded in an article I wrote that talked about why are there so few women music critics, why is there no legacy, no oeuvre of these women, and documenting what a chauvinistic profession it was. So it was interesting to see the effects of that on women artists, which Joni Mitchell can also talk a lot about.
Someone that is given a lot of attention in this book and isn't given enough credit in other places is Sandy West for her drumming. And how important was it for you to get her story out there, both the great aspects and some of the more negative aspects of her life?
It actually really started with Sandy. The book started pretty much with Sandy. First of all, I always have a thing for drummers. I was just really fascinated by her. I still am fascinated by her. I never got to meet her. She died in 2006. And her testimony in Edge Play, the Vicky's documentary, was so riveting and compelling, and you just kind of have to see it. But she, her life became very tragic, not just drugs, but she became a enforcer for drug dealers, and she carried a gun, and she became this kind of thug. She became a thug, and she spent a lot of time in jail. But yet she's this beautiful, strong, pioneering woman who friends of her said she was just an incredibly loyal, kind, generous woman also, who I think was just so damaged by what happened to the Runaways that she never did recover. She died of cancer while she became ill while she was in prison, actually. So the book began actually as a master's thesis while I was at USC about her, just focusing on her. And I had in my mind that maybe this would turn into a book about the whole band. I actually didn't know the movie was going to come out when it did. I knew that they'd been working on it for a long time, and I was like, yeah, that'll ever happen. And then it did. I kind of wish the timing had been a little bit better. So after I wrote that thesis, I decided to do the rest of the book. So it was really important. And also because the movie did come out, and actually it became even more important to tell the story of the Runaways because I felt that Sandy was not adequately represented in the movie.
Some things that have come up lately with Miley Cyrus and her outfits and dancing around and a mouse bustier and all of that. Can you draw a correlation through some of the stuff that Cherie Currie had to go through? And you have a quote that I really like that said, while she projected one image, she was not in charge of the way that image was perceived. And do you see a connection between some of the newer artists that are kind of going through that right now?
Yeah, we're totally reinventing the wheel. And actually when the whole VMAs Miley Cyrus thing went down, I actually blogged about this immediately because, yes, it was just absolutely apparent to me that a lot of what the slut-shaming that was going on with Miley Cyrus is what happened to Cherie. Cherie was really, one of the first female music performers to appear in a bustier on stage. And she got a lot of fans for it, but she also got really widely disparaged and criticized for it in a very Miley Cyrus way. And even this image of this teenage girl rubbing against this man 20 years her senior is so reminiscent of pictures of the Runaways with Kim Fowley. So that's all very creepy and disturbing. I would love to get Miley a copy of this book. Miley Cyrus is a huge Joan Jett fan, and she's done Runaways medleys in concert. So she is aware of this history and of this legacy. I just think that she went more the Cherie direction instead of the Joan direction.
There's still time.
I hope so.
Speaking of Joan Jett, you chronicle her, you just read a portion, and she comes off as very shy, almost dorky in a way. But when I think of Joan Jett, that's the last thing I think about. I think about this giant personality, this person who owns the stage. She isn't a female rock star. She's a rock star. And just talking about her transition and what it took to get her the confidence.
A rock star who's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I want to point out. None of the Runaways, nor Joan, nor any individual member are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is why it was really awesome that Nirvana had Joan come out and perform with them at the concert a couple weeks ago, and had only female performers come up. That was really, I love that. So yeah, Joan was very shy, and she actually said a great thing to me. She said we were in like this crucible traveling at 100 miles per hour because it all happened really, really quickly and was very, very intense. And I think, she became this hard metal in that crucible, right? It was she was, in this furnace, and it made her very strong. It gave her the confidence. Everybody says she was very shy when it started, and she's still kind of, I would say, maybe an introspective kind of person. But she is also really tough as nails. I think she's, been through the mill and doesn't really brook any nonsense at this point.
So it's been several decades since they put out their first album, but why are people still so enamored with them? You're writing a book. We still play them all the time at KXLU. And even someone like in the UFC, Ronda Rousey, she comes out to a Joan Jett song. They're still so big in music and in culture. What about them has made them stay around this long?
Well, I think they're more considered legendary and influential than they are actually successful, because if you look at the sales figures or the fact that the records aren't even available commercially in the United States, like they've never really had any kind of commercial success or mainstream radio play. They have like a devoted following, but it's small, it's sort of like a Velvet Underground thing, they have a great reputation, but probably took Lou's death for people to really start being aware of who the Velvet Underground were, sadly. But I think, and maybe because the music isn't overplayed and it isn't overexposed, and it still can be like our little club's secret, that keeps it strong and fresh, and we haven't gotten sick of it the way we could have gotten sick of other bands. And I also just think, as we said, it's just great music. Songs like American Nights, they just withstand the test of time. They're really classic tunes. And Waiting for the Night, there's just lots of tunes that, even on top of the ones that get played, like Cherry Bomb, that deserve to get played.
I agree with that. I've been listening to it all week, and as a DJ, I always play Cherry Bomb, but being able to go through the whole catalog, there's so many ones that I never was able to focus on that I'm glad I got to look back. So I suggest that everyone do that when they get home. So we're talking about this book, but you've written, we covered it earlier about Bjork and done some other writing. Do you have any interest in writing about another band, and if so, any ideas?
Maybe. I'm definitely pursuing one particular project that was presented to me, but it's still really in just a conceptual stage, so definitely can't talk about it yet, which would be another music, female. But sometimes I'm like, think I should also branch out and write about some other topics, even though it's really what I love. I also don't want to be stuck in this ghetto, so I'm considering what the next book is going to be.
All right, now the floor is open for questions. I'm sure you guys have amazing questions, so don't be shy. You had a couple drinks.
Yeah, we should try to use the mic, I think, because of it being on the...
Hey, Professor. I'm wondering, since you sort of gave the spiel at the end of your PowerPoint about being invested in girl band's future, I'm wondering what you think of modern groups like Haim or Tegan and Sarah, or groups like that, and how they're carrying on the legacy.
I actually think this is a really amazing time for women in music, and that was also part of what the Nirvana performance showed, and that it ranges from the incredibly successful, like Lorde, who I think is really an amazing phenomenon. Talk about a teenage girl, but who seems to be completely empowered and self-aware, and hopefully not going to go through what the Runaways had to go through. And I love Haim. Best Coast. There's, and like Lady Gaga. I like, a lot of. I love St. Vincent. That was also a great choice for them to have. And Girl Pool. I'm going to say that again. There's already. So I actually do think that it's a really positive time. I think maybe some of that is because of the internet, that it allows, and Lorde is an example of this, it allows women to sort of not have to go through those record company schmoes and mainstream radio guys to get played, and it allows them to develop their own followings. And maybe there's actually just been progress in the world. Excellent question. You should be a journalist.
This may be a really naive question, but it seems to me, because you mentioned Joni Mitchell, but just that there are just women singers alone, even Lady Gaga, and then there's this phenomenon of not having a band, right? So there's this idea of any number of women singers alone, and there's certainly men singers alone. And what's that about? Why the band is so challenging versus the sole singer, right, which is around?
Right, that's a really, really good point. And I think there's a lot of different elements to that. I mean, one is just that there's just not that many female instrumentalists in bands with males. There's a lot more now than there used to be, but it's still not as prevalent. So I think there's just a way in which there's Joan talked in the book about that girls are told they can't play guitar, which is ridiculous because girls are playing violin in orchestras and whatever. It's a power thing. There's something very sexual and phallic about playing the guitar in rock and roll, right? So there's the sense that women aren't supposed to master these objects. But then also I think there's just a fear of what happens when girls get together. And there's a, pussy riot, what can I say? And actually I heard a really great NPR commentary about how, like, the lack of coverage of women's team sports ever. Yeah, which really made me think about the lack of coverage of girl bands. And rock radio has been historically resistant to this. If you read Anna Nancy Wilson's memoir, from Heart, they confronted a lot of the same issues. It's fascinating to read it and compare it to Queens of Noise. They went through a lot of the same things of, and everything that happened to the Runaways is they're told they can't play. Everybody's like, and then people be like, oh, we saw them live. Actually, they can play. It's amazing. Girls can play. And, and they're trivialized and they're seen as novelties, or it's assumed that they're groupies, that they're just there to hang around with the males in the scene. So yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways in which it's threatening and but there are some, as we said now, there are some more now.
Well, thanks for bringing this story forward.
You're welcome.
I think Joan Jett and Lita Ford's success as solo artists kind of gave credence to the Runaways, that they did have talent, and it just took a little longer for them to get recognized. I was curious if there was ever any attempts to get the Runaways back together, like for a one-off show for charity or for nostalgia, or if anything that ever happened in that arena.
Yeah, I do think that, I don't know if we'd be talking to the Runaways so much if Joan and Lita hadn't gone on to have subsequent success. Definitely, it's a good point. And yes, there have been several attempts over the years to bring the Runaways back together, and different members of the band have resisted at different points in time. As recently as last year, Lita and Cherie were really pushing for there to be a reunion, and Joan is just not interested. And there's, Sandy's not around, and it'd be unclear who the bass player was. They went through a lot of different bass players. So I don't think it will ever happen, but who knows? And I have mixed feelings about whether I would want it to happen. I didn't like the Velvets getting back together. I didn't like the Sex Pistols getting back together. I just sort of want the past to stay in the past and people to move on. But which I think is how Joan feels too. That she just doesn't see the point. But.
Anybody else have a question?
I have a personal question. I just am curious if you play musical instruments.
I know how to play
Me too.
guitar and piano, and I actually picked up my guitar for the first time in years, a week or so ago, and my husband was like, "Ooh, what's going on?" But he was really happy about it. Funnily, I have this beautiful Silvertone that's exactly the same one that Joan plays in the Runaways movie, which I've had for years. So when I saw the movie, I was like, "Oh my god, that's really, really weird." Her first guitar was a Silvertone, but I think I love the music too much to spoil it with my own playing.
You could start a faculty band. I'm just saying. She has blue hair. She could be the singer.
Actually, Gail was in a band, I think, at one point. She's a punk legend, too.
Sorry. No, as you mentioned that you are Angelina, and you, I read a couple of it where you describe just the feeling and the 70s Sunset Strip happening. Were you ever fortunate enough to actually have seen them perform?
Just seen the Runaways? No, I was just a little too young, and I was in a small Midwestern town, which actually, it's possible, they've definitely played near the town that I grew up in, but I was just a little too young to have seen them. So, I mean, years later, I've seen Joan, I've seen Cherie and Lita since, but I was just a little too young for that. Maybe if I lived in LA, and if I lived in LA, it might have happened, but we moved when I was 4 to Beloit. So, no, I wish. There's some pretty good, there's a couple of bootlegs floating around out there that are pretty good.
Anybody else?
Are we, any last questions? Are we ready to go?
Don't be shy.
Hear some music.
You rock!
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Mukta and I'm the general manager at KXLU. I just wanted to thank you all for being here, anyone who is attending live, and for those of you listening on the radio, thanks for tuning in. We hope to have events like this more often. Just big thank you to Evelyn McDonnell for presenting, to McAllister from She Rocks for interviewing her. That was amazing. I learned so much just from that conversation. Thank you to Carol and Jamie from the LMU Library. And once again, thank you to all of you for being here. Please join us after this for a book signing downstairs. And then after that, or at the same time, we're going to have a performance by a local band called Upset. Really cool, super group. You're going to love it.